Welcome to another Facebook Live. Our guest today, he has been in the business for the last 20 years. He's been applying research in applied behavioral neuroscience as a dynamic keynote speaker, leadership advisor, world-class sales expert, and renowned speaker coach. His company has trained over 100,000 people to solve some of the toughest challenges when it comes to leadership, sales, and change. I know I have learned a lot from him as well, and I'm excited to get into this. Welcome, René Rodriguez and Barry Habib.
Thanks, guys. Such an honor to be here with you.
Hey, we're glad to have you here, man.
We are very glad to have you.
It's fun to be doing this again together. So it's always a pleasure being here.
It is, and I've been to a few Amplify events, and you really do kind of break down the neuroscience. And before we kind of get into all of that, can you just talk to us about why it's so important to be more effective and amplify your message?
You know, probably one of the biggest questions, I look at a lot of things to its opposite, right? So people say, why influence? Because my world started sort of in change management and sales and understanding leadership and all of those things. But I always look at, to understand something, I look at its opposite. And so me growing up as a kid, I mean, I think we've all had the experience of having an idea and sharing it and nobody listening. Or maybe telling a joke at a party and nobody realizes it's a joke. Or just even wanting to tell your boss about something, or selling a product and no one buying. It's one of the loneliest feelings in the world because we feel insignificant. We can't make an impact. We can't make a mark on our world, and we feel like everything we do doesn't do anything. So that's the opposite of it. So we look at the other side of it, is sharing an idea and watching people respond, watching people take action, watching people even just smile, or saying, wow, I never thought about it that way. That feeling of being able to verbalize an idea that comes from somewhere inside of you and seeing it affect the world, even though it might be a smaller world, those in front of us, is one of the best experiences of the human experience. And it's because we feel significant. And so I think that why it's so important, we can talk about the business reasons. And I think that's one of the conversations I'm actually excited to talk to Barry about, from, you know, how do we turn this into a business value into our clients, into referral partners and things like that. But from a personal perspective, it helps us feel like we're making an impact on the world. It helps with our families, our communication, it helps with our children, it helps with our businesses and people that we work with. So I mean, I can't honestly think of anything that it doesn't impact.
You know, Renee, when you talk about the benefit of being an effective communicator, I always say the world's problems could be far diminished from where they are if we could just communicate better. And communication is very hard. You know, I wrote about this in my book, that it's really taking an idea that resides inside your brain and planting it in someone else's brain. But people formulate ideas over time, so it's difficult for many people to communicate because they skip the step of formulation that occurred within their brain, and they just want to take the end result and put it in somebody else's brain without the benefit of guiding them along the path. Now, we can't always take that long winding road there, but we need to at least provide a Reader's Digest version that in some cases where it's important, you know, if there's an obvious conclusion, it's obvious, but let's remember it might not be as obvious to others as it's become to ourselves because we formulated that. So what we really need to do is metaphorically hold their hand in a very concise way, but effective way along that journey, so that they can understand why we have arrived at that conclusion and why the idea we're giving them will hopefully make sense to them as well. Whether they agree with it or not is a different story, but at least they'll understand the rationale behind it and it won't be immediately dismissed.
I love how you said that we skip over the formulation. That's a new articulation. I think that there's other names for it, but when I think you're absolutely correct. We all go through this formulation that we logically bring ourselves to this conclusion that there's 1 + 1 = 2 for a reason in our head. And especially complex ideas like what you're communicating with MBS Highway, not only are there financial reasons and all of these other factors involved. I mean, I remember our call when you walked me through MBS, I was just sitting there going with my jaw on the floor. I'm like, it does all this? Like, it's like solving everything. And the amount of time it would take for somebody to understand that, and yet the journey, it's all there. But now with you articulating how we got to somewhere, that I'll ask this question back, from what I understand too, when it comes to even behavioral economics, that a lot of the things that you're trying to teach people goes against their inherent need to want to do a certain way, and you're changing them this way. We're so emotional when it comes to financial decisions, and you're providing a more logical approach to that.
Well, Renee, you know, it's great that you mentioned that, because when if we're going to be an effective communicator, we're going to get people's attention, we're going to bore them pretty quickly if we're not giving them something that they don't know. But
Right.
giving them something that they don't know means that there might be a resistance to change. And we've got to be delicate. We've got to be careful. We have to go at this in a strategic manner because, listen, something I've learned, especially being a parent, is unwanted advice is oftentimes resented, isn't it? Just ask a teenager, try and give a teenager advice. So people will dismiss advice rather quickly. So what we want to try to do is start by questioning and start by, if in the cases we can, in order to be a good communicator, I think that if we could start by questioning and finding out what it is that are the issues that they're having, then instead of just providing advice, you could say, well, because you said this, here's what might work for you, or here's an alternative. So, I always say I want to plant the seed when the ground is fertile. So if you have dry, barren land, the seeds you're throwing out there aren't going to really produce anything. But if you can cause the ground to be more fertile and have them welcome that advice, then this is something that is really important. But what I wanted to ask you, Renee, is assuming that you agree with that, then how do we create the most effective message depending on the medium that we have?
Well, I think you said a lot of important things there. One, you said listening. Like you're listening, like your first thing you said in good communication, you're saying, I'm listening to what they're saying. And based on what I just heard you say, here's what I'm thinking. And I think that's the piece a lot of people miss, is they forget to just hear and listen to their customer. Because if we listen really well, we're going to understand how they buy, what's important to them, what are the pieces that are critical to them, and then allows us time to sort of formulate a better response to that. The other thing that you said I thought that is critical too is the analogy of fertilizing the soil is exactly it. You can't plant seeds in cement. And most of the ideas that we're trying to implement, especially with people that have sales resistance or the resistance around a new idea, or maybe they're scared about the topic, or they just don't know, which creates stress. Resistance is stress. And so when we understand how to lower the stress level, which in essence is how we fertilize the soil through building trust, charts and graphs, showing that we know what we're talking about, all the things that you guys create, now all of a sudden people start feeling comfortable to saying, okay, hold on a second, I'm in the hands of somebody who understands what's going on. And so once they understand what's going on, I can start listening better to implant those ideas to have them start growing. And so we teach a methodology for that. And I didn't invent it. And I just put a name to this one, but it's something that, which is why I'm excited for our interview at Amplify Live. It's all the best speakers follow a certain sequence. They follow this. I mean, Martin Luther King followed that sequence. All the great presidents that we all adored and loved, all the leaders that we love, even the actors, they follow a certain sequence on how they communicate things. And they all do what we call framing and a frame of reference. And a good frame of reference is going to till that soil. It's going to prepare an audience to make sure that we understand what is being said. And so when we get into framing is, when I say very simply, it's actually not simple. It's a construct of reality. It's how we understand the world. We understand things through frames of reference. And before, we said, well, it's like Netflix or Uber. Well, before they came along, we didn't even have a frame of reference of what, we get in, we hit a button and they show up, and we get in and get out, we don't have to pay. I mean, it was such a disruptive idea. There was no frame of reference. Now we can go, oh, it's kind of like Netflix for this, or it's kind of like an Uber for this. We're attaching onto something that they already knew there. The challenge is that we have frames of reference that we're not aware of that are negative. Like if I were to say used car salesman, just that term brings up, sleazy and slimy and dishonest and all sorts of negative frames of reference that go in and cloud the communication or make the soil harder to plant in. And if we don't address those frames or reframe the conversation prior to even allowing those negative ones to come up, we're in a lot of trouble. So I think understanding framing is huge.
So Renee, you're a master at teaching this stuff. Could you help us, give us maybe some example, if you can, on framing, or something that individuals who are watching this right now can utilize proper framing or more effective framing?
Absolutely. First and foremost, and I will tell you this, and I'm going to challenge you back. Let's apply it conceptually and theoretically, and then let's take a recent update that you guys are doing, maybe a Facebook post that you guys are doing, and let's apply it to that, because that's one of my most exciting things to do. Because I think, I'm going to be very honest, a lot of the listeners don't understand framing and tie down, And we're going to give you a little tip on how to take the post-it, the gold that Barry's giving you and Megan's giving you, and have it increase by just adding one little phrase at the end of it and maybe something prior to it. And so, for example, if I were to ask you, what's your favorite color? What's your favorite color, Barry?
Blue.
Blue. Megan, what's your favorite color?
My favorite color, you know, it reminds me of going back to Minnesota with my family. We spend all the time on the lake, and the lake was just this symbolic thing of getting the family together, spending time together. And that Renee, that's why my favorite color is blue.
All right. So
you asked Barry, it's blue. Megan's taking you to the lake.
And so, you know, the concept, like you asked me, you know, I grew up, you know, say, what's your favorite color, Renee? You know, I grew up in Miami, moved to Minnesota when I was 7 years old, lived in Minnesota, Miami till I was about 16. So I never really felt at home. But if I was by a palm tree, I looked up, I could see palm trees, and I was close to my friends, my food, my music, my culture, the things that made me happiest. And so green is my favorite color because palm trees are green. And so the frame is the story to help understand the color. If I were just to say green, somebody might make the assumption, because what happens if we don't frame things for the audience, the human system, our brain, has to create a frame to build a construct of what you just said to understand it. And so now I'm using a ridiculous example of the color, but we say, okay, so now you learned that I'm from Miami. You could probably assume that I'm Cuban. You know that I like Latin food and Latin music. I like palm trees. And if you like Latin food and if you like palm trees and you like beaches, we just connected on something minor. And you asked me a question as silly as, what's my favorite color? And so, you know, if I weren't to say it, you could say, so you can answer the question. So, you know, I remember growing up, and my favorite trips with my uncle were going out deep sea fishing. And when the water was a certain color, I knew it was going to be a good day. And we were out there, and it was just amazing. And there was something about the water when it was just that royal deep sea blue that just brought calm to me. And so one of the things I decided to do was use a lighting in my office that kind of reminded me of that same color. And so one of the things I'll challenge you with is, remember, when a client experience, this is what we call a tie-down, they're the little things that create the emotional connections with your clients. And so pay attention to the color of your office. Pay attention to the smell when they walk into the foyer. Is it rotten? Is there mold? Because you want to make sure that all of those mini experiences are leading to a positive emotional experience when they see you. And if you believe that people buy based on emotion, I'll challenge you. Are you willing to take your office to create the same thing? And so now we just added a tangible outcome to something as silly as color, right? And it was valuable. And so another example that I'll give you, and then I want to go to a real.
By the way, much more effective the way you and Megan did it.
Yeah, well, we watch you do it, dude. We learn this stuff by watching people like you. So yeah, we know that you do this, especially when it comes to the financial markets. You are the authority, the person to watch, and so that's why I want to come back to it, because this is going to be a fun conversation. So there's another example. I was helping an executive get ready for an interview. She was going to run a $1 billion business unit within a very large organization. And they asked if I could help her with the interview. And the interview is about a 9-hour process. It's her and about 7, 8 other people that drill her with questions. And she walked in, she's a PhD, MBA, as put together as, she was just, I was like, man, I want to take her class. She was like really solid. And so we put her through a mock interview process. I put a chair in front, and I put 3 people in front of her and her in a chair, and I sit off to the side to watch facial expressions and micro expressions and body language and sequencing time and all the things that I look for. And we asked her the first question. They said, tell us something you're proud of. And she answered like every executive has ever been taught to answer: short, concise, and sweet, and to the point. And so she hitched her coat and she just said, I got straight A's my last year in school, one of my proudest moments. And so, of course, what was missing? There was no frame. And so they gave her feedback and said, wow, it was short and concise, it was very powerful and presidential. And they said, Renee, what'd you think? Well, since there was no frame, I started creating frames, because that's what our brain does. I said, oh, so you got straight A's your last year in school? So you're a procrastinator? Are you going to procrastinate for us as well? She looks at me like I'm crazy. I said, oh, did mommy and daddy pay for school so you didn't have to work that hard, except the last year? Maybe you had to show them that maybe they didn't waste their money, and it happens to be the easiest year? Is that what happened? Now she's got a tear in her eye. And I said, Janice, I didn't mean any of those words, but I did it to illustrate that you didn't give us a frame. So we don't understand how to interpret straight A's my last year in school. And now the mock interview panel is going, yeah, I was kind of wondering about that. Even people giving feedback aren't always honest. And I said, but I do know it was important to you, wasn't it? And she just nodded her head. And I said, why? It took her a minute and a half to compose herself. And she looks at me and she says, When you've been told you're stupid your entire life by adults, you tend to believe them. And something happened my last year in school where I looked myself in the mirror and said, either I'm going to believe them forever or I'm going to do something about it. And I did something about it. So now all of a sudden this answer takes on a whole new life of a fighter, overcoming resistance, resiliency. She's courageous, and people are like, wow, you fall in love with this person. And she skipped that whole piece and just said, straight A's my last year in school. What's your interest rate? It's this. It's no different, because the client is going to put a frame around it if you don't. And so by her putting the frame helped us understand the message. But the last part is this thing we call a tie down. Now, a tie down answers a question of what this means to you is. And that's where I think we're going to have a lot of fun. And when I say fun, I mean we're going to help you make a lot more money by using Barry Megan's MBS information to be able to add this tie down. The tie down answers the question of what this means to you is. And so remember, the first time we were asked, tell us something you're proud of, we answered right in the here and now. Big mistake. We got to stop answering here and now. What's your favorite color? Don't answer that question right away. Go back in time and create the frame. And I'll show you a picture of what that looks like here in a second. And so if you were to say, well, tell us something you're proud of, so this would be the answer according to what we call the amplify formula, frame, message, tie down. So tell us something you're proud of. So, well, unfortunately, growing up, I was surrounded by a lot of adults that told me I wasn't real smart. And when adults speak to you that way as a kid, you tend to act that way. So I didn't do real well in school. But something happened my last year in school where I looked myself in the mirror and I said, either I'm going to believe them forever or I'm going to do something about it. So I went out and got the help that I needed, put my nose to the grindstone, and I'm proud to tell you, message, that I got straight A's my last year in school. Now I'm assuming, Barry, if I do get a chance to work with you and your team, this is the tie down, that there are going to be times that our backs are going to be against the wall, we're going to be facing seemingly insurmountable challenges. But I promise you this, if I get a chance to be on your team, I will be out there next to you, if not out in front, overcoming those challenges in the same way I overcame them in my own personal life, but this time for you and for your team.
So
Frame,
powerful.
message, tie down.
That's really powerful. It's a brilliant way to get your message across or answer questions. It's brilliant.
And so that's the formula. And so then what I see a lot of people do with great financial information is they copy what you said and just post it with no frame and no tie down. But if you guys watch, and I want to challenge all of you, go back and you there's a reason you love listening to Barry. He always ties it down. He creates a beautiful frame for you to understand something you never even wanted to understand, didn't know it mattered, and all of a sudden he goes, I'm going to talk to you about something, I don't know, I'm not a financial guy. Was it loan level price adjustments? I think I heard you say that one time. I'm like, I don't give a, what the hell is that? I don't care. I don't do loans. But then he started talking about it, and I'm like, oh, hold on, what is that? All of a sudden now I'm interested. The frame was like drawing me in, and then he explained what it was. I'm like, that's fascinating, but I don't know what it means to me. And then he goes, but so what that means to you is, and I'm like, oh. You got to do all three that he does. A lot of us just take the data and push the data out. No. We got to help them understand and till the soil to give them the data, and then here's what you do with it. That little process is the secret message. Now, practicing it is what Amplify is all about. We help teach the process and then help people uncover one of the best framing devices, because there's different framing devices, is your origin story. Where you came from, how you got here, and why you love serving the customers that you serve. That's what starts to create trust and credibility, but it does not influence people. It draws people in, captures attention, and builds trust so that you can deliver your value proposition message of what makes you unique, which, by the way, there isn't much that makes you unique in this business. There's not patent monopolies out there. Most people have pretty much the same interest rates, but if you can communicate that information in a unique way, and the delivery of the commoditized information is new and really easy to understand, and I trust you, and wow, these charts and graphs look great, and you're really helping me build my future, and there's a structured plan, that's unique. To then go to the tie down and say, here's what it means to you and what it looks like to your future and what it means to your family, that's the package.
So good. Every time I listen to this, I get so much from it. So let's take an example of an originator, a video that they might want to be posting for social media right now. And one thing that we've been talking about, you wanted to use the morning update. Well, one thing that we've been talking about on the morning update is that we've been seeing a slight rise in inflation, and we're going to see this kind of peak throughout the next couple months. And if this happens, rates likely cannot stay where they're at. So rates would go up. So let's create a video right now that could help originators with.
Or you know what, Megan, instead of that, let's just really make it broad based on this. Let's talk about really something very current right now, rather than it happening. What's happening right now is, real estate values and bidding over asking price, because we cover that every day on, the health of the housing market and the media's misconception of it. So let's talk about that.
So tell me, because I don't understand this, I'm just going to have fun just dissecting it by asking you guys. This is where it gets fun, because we don't know where it's going to go, but we know it's going to be awesome. So let's start with the message. What's the message? You said that, repeat what you just said, that the market is doing what?
So there's many aspects of the real estate market right now. We know it's very, very hot, but the media is all over talking about that there's a housing bubble, which would scare people. There's fears about affordability. There's more than half the transactions, there are multiple bids over asking price. So these are all challenges that people are facing every day. Fears about what happens with forbearance. Will that cause the market to tumble? And just the fear of the old saying, what goes up must come down. And many people are saying, well, the market's gone up so much, so it has to come down. So these are the narratives.
So can I ask a question on that? So yeah. What I'm hearing is that there's some existing frames out there, that there's some fear, right? There's some fear out there around these things. So those are existing frames, is that right? That people are worried about these things, that the media
and it's really being proliferated by the media and by those who are less informed and those who want to grab maybe some attention or headlines by preying on the amygdala. And we know that portion of our brain, which is very sensitive to fear, will literally slow time down and cause us to have focus and memory of that. So this is the way that the media gets us to pay attention and gets higher ratings, by preying on our fears. So this is all out there. The unfortunate side effect of this is that people who could be taking advantage of opportunities are passing them by because they're scared out of them. We've been hearing this for many, many years. The phenomenon of real estate values going up recently is one thing, but they've gone up rather significantly for the past several years, where all along the line, renting is better than buying. You shouldn't buy a home. The housing market's getting too hot. All of these negative aspects have been in the media for several years. We've been combating them, but now it's really in vogue because, quite frankly, the real estate market has taken a major move higher. So it's really become a hot topic right now.
So now, okay, I love that. So right now you have some existing frames. So I'm going to go up to another concept before we get to this, because what Barry's talking about is what I would call the 3 Ps, right? And if you can predict the state of your buyer, your listener, they're scared, and here's the reason why, there's all this stuff, then you have to do something to preempt it first. Before you even start thinking about delivering your message, they're functioning under a frame of fear, and the media is contributing to that nonstop. I'll never forget the first time I saw you speak. It was in Minnesota, and you said the media is not a public service organization. And it was, I don't know how many, like it was 19 years ago. And I was like, it was this mind-blowing concept of saying, well, I thought they were like there to help me. It's like, no, they're not. And they're you were talking about sizzle on the steak and all of that stuff. That has stayed with me 19 years. And so then how do I predict, to preempt, to prevent, right? Because that's what you're saying, is before we even get started, we got to deal with some of this stuff. And so the frame, or a framing device, is what's going to handle that. So because there's a message I think you want to deliver. What's the message you want to deliver? You guys understand that right now is a great time to buy. Is that right? Or is that, what's the message?
Well, I wouldn't put it in blanket terms, but there is a terrific opportunity in real estate if done correctly.
Okay, so an opportunity in if done correctly. Okay, so that's the message he wants to deliver. And if you deliver, and you guys know this, hey, but right now is a great time. If you do real estate correct, it's a great time to buy. People can be like, yeah, but the this, but the that, blah, 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 and they're repeating what they saw in the media. So we don't start with the message. That's the big piece, right? So what frame or what story, Barry, do you use? Because I think one of them, a simple one, is, well, first let's understand the media, that they're not there to help you. That's sort of a reframing. What else would you do right now to help people prepare to hear that message?
You've probably been hearing the media talk about potential issues with the housing market, fears that there could be a housing bubble, that prices have gone up and therefore they must come down. You might be hearing that once forbearance is over, that the housing market's going to take a tumble, that this looks a lot like 2007 and 2008. You're probably hearing that homes are not affordable. Well, while all that's out there, what I'm here to tell you is when you take a deeper look, it's really not the case at all. And by understanding it better, it provides us with a great opportunity to take advantage of the future potential for prices to move higher.
So how would you help us take a better look? So, okay, what do you mean by taking a better look? What does that mean, Barry?
So what I'd want to do is I'd want to try and address those systematically. And I'd want to take each and every one of those. I'd want to explain that just because prices have gone up, it doesn't mean they come down. If you take a look at what are the driving forces, with anything where you have price discovery, you have supply and demand. So you currently have a lot more demand than supply. And when we look at demographics suggest that that demand gets stronger over the next few years. At the same time, supply is not really coming up to meet that demand because prices to build are escalating. It's more difficult to build, especially on the lower end. And therefore, you're going to have this imbalance. And whenever you have an imbalance of too many buyers and not enough sellers, prices tend to move higher.
So, okay, I love this, by the way. Okay, so what I'm hearing, so and if you're listening to this, see, I learned how to do this by studying people like Barry. What I'm hearing him do, he's not saying, there's no blanket to this, because he's saying, really, this isn't an easy solution. It's going to require you to study, it's going to require you to learn, and to spend some time becoming an expert. And I'm assuming CMA teaches all of these things. Is that right?
We do teach it through CMA. We give the data through MBS Highway, but really the message that we want to give that potential referral source or buyer is that we have that ability and expertise to help you. And I think it's important for us to make people aware that we have that expertise, that we're the resource that they need to go to in order to facilitate that. So as experts out there, if we can show that we have the knowledge, we've put in the work, we've done all the basics that need to be done, and we're using the correct data sets, that we could be a resource that they need.
So I love it. So if by acknowledging that right now that people's understanding of what's going on based on their current existing frames and the fear in the media that's being created, that we got to address a few things, right? We got to acknowledge the fear. We got to approach them systematically. What are the real driving forces, and do some education on supply and demand so that we start reframing the media and they go, okay, hold on a second, maybe I was thinking about that wrong, and media isn't there to help, so that we can then say there is an opportunity in the marketplace. And the secondary message, and based on what you just saw, without me saying the words, they're going to feel like I am the expert to be able to deliver that. Now, what the thing that I want to add to that is where the big movement comes in. Because right now, the frame is what's created emotional movement. We got to, in this world that we live in, we got to be able to capture attention in a very busy, distracted world. And if you have the right frame and you can tell the right story, because there might be even, I might even think, Barry, of a story. You know, is there a story that goes, I remember back when, and there was like, when you give us a historical story in that moment that kind of covers these at a higher level, that's another way of framing this. But then let's say we frame it, we're able to discuss these things, and we're able to say, you know, so based on all that, there actually is, for those that know how to do it right, an opportunity. And then by inherently, because you showed me that, I'm softly saying, and I'm the expert. So now the next part is what that means to you, right? So basically what that means to you is, and something, I'm going to say it wrong, but I'm going to give you the idea and you correct me. And so based on this and acknowledging the fear, and there's real opportunity, I can help you. So really what that means to you is every day that we wait to make a decision, you're actually losing money. So what I'd like for you to do, or for like us to do, is run a scenario on X. So that would be an action-driven tie down. What it means to you is I want you to take the step. And if I can add that piece to the end, I'll know what to click. If is there a button I need to click? Is there an email I need to sign up? Is there an appointment I need to book? What would be that last piece here? So what does all that mean to me?
And that's exactly what we have to be explaining to them, is that right now there is an opportunity. But you know, we want to stress the fact that they can come to us to help them do the proper evaluation. That's why we said, if you do it right, that was the key sentence there is if done correctly, there's an opportunity. Because people, listen, I'm not going to say that individuals who are paying an exorbitant amount over asking price today aren't putting themselves in their own housing bubble. I don't think there's a widespread housing bubble. And I think that home prices will appreciate over the next couple of years. The further out you go, it depends on where we are. But if you make decisions that are based upon not doing the research and sound fundamentals that are strictly emotionally driven, you potentially could put yourself in emotional housing, in an individual housing bubble based on that emotional decision. So that's why you need to have the correct evaluation tools. So, a couple of things here is that one is we want to acknowledge that there are concerns out there, right? Because two of the most dangerous words I think that a salesperson can speak are no problem. And because no problem serves you very poorly in almost all cases, because it sets the expectation level that, hey, anybody could do it. So it's not making it special. I'd rather acknowledge that this is a challenge and that there's a mountain to be climbed, but that you're in good hands to get there. I'm aware of the problem, I'm aware of the mountain, and I have the expertise and the tools in order to get you over the mountain to what I feel will be a very good result for you, as opposed to, no problem. Because then we go through something, well, anybody could do it, they don't need me. And then if I do this miraculous job, I'm going to get burned out because I'm not going to be appreciated. So I would try to first show that there is an issue, but show that we have the expertise, and then illustrate that with examples as well. And the other thing that you were mentioning, Renee, is that as we talk about this level of expertise that we have, this is going to be an opportunity for us to now walk them through how they can get there.
Love that. Okay, so don't make fun of me, but I'm going to try to regurgitate the information at somebody who is not a financial expert, not a loan officer, as somebody who's just listening to this, and I'm going to jump to a very high level. But if I can do this, you guys that are the experts watching this can do this and run circles around me, okay? But I'm just going to put what I heard into a sequence. So if I'm talking to a buyer, I might say something along the lines before I even get started. Say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, first and foremost, I'm so excited that we got a chance to meet. And before we get started, I know, and I don't know if you've been watching the news, but there's a lot of fear out there. Have you been seeing that out there? And they say yes, no, wherever. They test out where they're at. I said, well, unfortunately, the media is not a public service organization. They're there just like everyone else, trying to make money, and unfortunately, fear sells. And so we have to take a look at some of the driving forces. I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the driving forces that are really driving the market right now, because I'll tell you a little secret. There are a lot of people that are making a lot of money in real estate right now, but I'm going to give you the key words: if done correctly. And I want to talk to you, I want to come back to that word, or those three words, if done correctly. And so pretend that I talked about supply and demand and everything that's going on. And so the reality is we do have a lot of opportunity that I want to show you. And we have some really special tools to do a very specific customized evaluation of your specific financial needs and your situation. And here's the thing, a lot of people are going to quote your rates, they're going to tell you what's happening in the marketplace, but would you agree that your situation might be different than someone else's? And they're going to say, yeah, of course. I said, that's how we look at it too. And so we look at things in a very customized fashion. So I'd like to set up a time with you to go through a very custom evaluation. You probably have a better name for this than I do here. To go through this so that we can paint a financial picture of what it would look like to take different scenarios. But I'll tell you this, there are people making money right now, if done correctly. I'd like to show you what it is that we do. And so that to me drives me down the path to be able to book an appointment so that now I'm in the best presentation, arena that I can with the tools that you have.
So that's great, Renee. I mean, that's brilliant. And I love the way that you did all of those things. You illustrated what you're teaching beautifully. You did the frame beautifully. And then you delivered a really concise and clear message, and then you tied it down as to how it impacts them. So, you're reading your home cooking here, your own cooking, and what it's doing is it's making it easy to understand. And then, what the individuals that are watching this could then do is say, okay, well, we know that 51% currently of homes that are purchased, there's multiple bids and they're going for over asking price. But you will want to be careful about that, because how do we know how much over asking price we could or should go? And when we do that, we use a tool that will help you evaluate it. We have a bid over ask tool. It's proprietary, and it's something that if you work with me, it's something that I could show you, and I'll give you an example of how that works. It might take, if it takes 4 months to break even on the home because you're bidding over asking price, that might be okay and acceptable and tolerable for you. But what if it took 7 years? would that then be a good decision? It might be, and you might be okay with that, but perhaps that might suggest that there are other options for you to consider. So this is the type of work that I think a real advisor does with their customer. This is what's going to separate you from just quoting rates with somebody, is doing exactly what you said, Renee, is giving them that ability. Or in the case of somebody who wants to bid over asking price, but they don't have the funds to do so. I want to. How do I do it? Because if I go over asking price, what if it doesn't appraise and I don't have enough money to do that in cash? Well, then that advisor might come back to him and say, so, here's the solution that we've helped our other clients with. What we've done is, I know everybody wants the lowest rate, but in this case, you can qualify for a little bit higher payment. So we take a little higher payment instead of the cash. By doing so, we get your closing costs paid for. The money you were going to use for closing costs, you now are able to use to bid a higher amount, maybe beat a cash offer, maybe not have to pay mortgage insurance, lower your mortgage insurance breakpoints. That can actually save you sometimes more money than it would cost for the extra monthly principal and interest payment by doing so. But most importantly, I get you in the home you want for just a little bit of difference every month instead of missing out on it.
If I'm listening to this, I'm a loan officer, I'd be verbatim copying and memorizing every single thing you just said there, because of the amount of preemption that you had there. You were preempting objections before they even came up. You were adding value and making your services cost money not to use you, because you were saving them money, allowing them better negotiation power, moving and shifting. I mean, that's what an expert should do, and you guys are getting paid for that. So this is something that literally you should be studying and researching every single day. Like a football player, basketball player watches and reviews tape, you should be reviewing this tape and practicing and memorizing these things, so that and then understanding the principles, so that you actually start thinking this way. I think that's great. I love that. It's literally, I'm going to be buying a house here in September, and I'm going, man, am I going to overpay? Is that going to be 7 years or 4 months? I'm starting to think of what it means to me. And that's the goal. When I start thinking of what it means to me, influence is beginning to happen.
So
now,
sorry, Megan.
I want to bring up a few things. We've gone through, how to really frame a message, whether it's talking in person or virtual, but I want to make sure that we have enough time to cover the other side of things. The body language, how to show up differently, whether it be in person or virtual, and just some tips and tricks that you can shed some light on.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so many. I mean, the reason we talk about body language is that we introduce ourselves before we say anything. Imagine if I were to come on the call like this, say, hey guys, good to be here. And I don't say anything.
Take those off.
Well, but why?
I'd be thinking you were like having fun the night prior and you're showing up with bloodshot eyes trying to cover it up.
Oh, so now she's projecting the party animal onto me. So see, now that's her frame. She's functioning from that frame, and we project frames onto other people. Some people think that maybe I'm trying to hide something, right? And so I go, why does this equate to hiding? And these are rhetorical questions, but simple questions. Why does sunglasses out of context, outside, it doesn't equate to hiding anything. I'm protecting from the sun.
I think because human beings, if we want to try and understand someone, we want to have some sort of eye contact in many cases, at least as brief as it is. We want to have some sort of connection in eye contact, because that can help us with how sincere the message is that the other person is delivering.
Absolutely. Eyes are actually what communicate meaning. The little micro movements in the eyes, when we can't see them, we don't know what people are meaning. And that's why poker players will wear this, because they're hiding the unconscious leaks of information, the tells. So we would never do this, and that's just dumb. But some people do it accidentally in this hybrid world. I'm calling it a hybrid world. They do it accidentally because they don't understand their angles of where the camera's at. And so they're saying, yeah, you can trust me. Let's talk about your money and everything. And now they can't see their eyes. And it's unintentional, but it creates the same exact effect because they don't understand the angles, right? And so what we teach people, if you do wear glasses and you got any of this going on, self-awareness is the first key to influence. You got to know that you have that going on. And so start the first 7 to 15 seconds of your meeting with no glasses. And say, it's really great to meet you here. I was like, and have a big smile, overcompensate because you're in this meeting. That's why I have 9 lights on me in here, is because my world shut down. I had to communicate this way. And after about 15 seconds, when first impression has been formed, you say, if you don't mind, I'm going to put my glasses on. I hope it's not too much of a blur. I'm claiming the frame there. I hope it's not too much of a blur, and say, now I got it here, and then I might, I'm going to raise them up a little bit. Sorry, I know it looks a little goofy, but at least now you can see my eyes, right? So I did this just so that I could eliminate the blur. And people are like, well, that seems like a hassle. I said, well, how important is trust? Because we talk about it, but this.
I want to show you something. So, by the way, I mean, I just had surgery on this eye, so that I could be a lot less dependent on reading glasses. But over the last 4 years, I've had to go crazy with reading glasses, right? So they were like, I got 100 pairs. I can't stand it. But thank goodness I've gotten away from them now. But what I would do is I would have glasses that are like this, that are very effective for me to read with, but they're not so effective because I'm doing things on camera a lot. So these glasses give me the ability to read, but look at the difference there. They're a lot better. So these are the ones that I use when I'm doing a Zoom. These are the ones that I use when I'm not doing a Zoom. And it's for that exact reason, because then people could see your eyes.
But see, folks, that's self-awareness. He knows. And I'm guessing the ones that help might even be more expensive. I don't know. But it's worth it because Barry understands the importance of trust and communication. That's why camera angles. I mean, I tell people all the time, say, okay, hey, great. It's great to be here, guys. I'm really excited that I'm here. And, let's talk about influence and communication and the power of presence, right? And it's like, hold on a second. Like, you'd never be like, we're here outside. The president is going to be giving his new speech here. It's like, no, Game 7 of the NBA Finals. You'd never see that. And so what we tell people, if I can see your floor, your camera's too high. If you notice, Barry's got an eye-to-eye connection. I tell people, point straight. And if it's pointing at the camera, that means that it's eye to eye. If you're saying point straight and it looks like this or like this, your camera's wrong. But the reason we do that has nothing to do with vanity. It has everything to do with a concept called disassociation. And so what happens is, disassociation is what happens to serial killers. They can kill people and dismember them like they can do a teddy bear. But it also happens at Thanksgiving. When we're sitting at the Thanksgiving table and the TV's on in the other room, we know there's a TV on, we know there's a movie, there's a story, there's characters. We can't fully hear it and see it all that well, so we disassociate from it to pay attention to something more interesting nearby. So what happens? If I can't see you or hear you all that well, I'm going to disassociate from you and start doing something a lot more interesting, or maybe doing email. And sometimes it's as simple as moving the microphone maybe a foot out of the wrong place. Now my microphone that was sitting above me is a $2,000 microphone. It's in the wrong place, and so I don't sound the same. And so having the self-awareness to know where the sweet spot of the microphone is makes a big difference. Or even just something like lighting. I got a $2,000 camera, got 9 lights on here, great audio, but all of a sudden, I'm here. Oh, but let me put my overhead light on. Hold on a second. That'll solve the problem. So now I've got overhead lights, right? So now I've got this scenario where I've got a $2,000 camera, $4,000 in lights, or lights that are not working, excuse me. I got a $2,000 microphone. I look like crap. Okay, hold on. Let me get my lights back on. All right. Oops, wrong button. Wrong button. And so now I've got that. Now I've got this shiny thing on my head. So let me turn that off. And now I'm back into 3-point lighting. But the reason that I want this is that it replicates the in-person experience, tells the brain, pay attention to me. I'm here and you can trust me because you can see everything. And so when the NBA canceled, I lost all events. I didn't have a product, a technology. I didn't have anything. I had in-person events and that was it. And I was done. And so we stopped and we said, okay, hold on a second. I got to figure out a studio. I didn't know what it was. I was using my iPad and a remote on the iPad literally a year ago. And we finally said, let's turn our DSLR into this. I called my filmmaker friends. And I said, build a studio. Let's figure this out. And 320 virtual events later, we're doing stuff that literally can launch. The stage can be a scary videos, just like we were on a switchboard. I can launch virtual brains and do funny things like that. I can talk about different concepts and branding, all of those different elements all here, and I do virtual events just by touching some buttons. So now that's the virtual side. So in person, where Megan was talking about, I'm going to slide my microphone back a little bit here. So in person, one of the things that's critical is, there we go. Where do we put our hands? A lot of people don't understand that hand placement is one of the most, the first thing that we talk about. And so there's this concept called the influence zone, which is your belly button to your eyes. And if my hands are in the influence zone, all of a sudden there's something just more engaging about it. There's something more, and my shoulders are square. Everything's good. The moment I go out of the influence zone, I say, guys, I'm super excited. Thanks so much for having me here. This is really great, right? And this is just weird. I don't know where to put my hands. But the moment I'm saying, guys, I'm so excited to be here. Look at all the people. I mean, now you guys got listeners from all over the place. And man, I'm just such a big fan. And all of a sudden, this becomes part of the PowerPoint. And I tell people, I haven't used PowerPoint in close to 10 years because I'm the PowerPoint or my audience is the PowerPoint. And so like I'm the PowerPoint, so it's pointing at me, right? Or the audience. And some people have, you remember back in the day when PowerPoint first came out and you first learned about animations and you started animating things and it just didn't make sense why, but we love the animation, the spins and all that stuff. Some people have like little animations that in their personal PowerPoint that like little hitches and stuff, or they're fidgeting. This is an unnecessary animation that doesn't contribute to your message. So we first got to teach people to calm down. And this is what we call home base. Right at the beginning of the influence zone, it's here. Hands are there. You can be here. We don't like this. This is conniving, right? We don't want pointing. We don't want the steeple. We just something relaxed here. And now all of a sudden, people move from I don't know where to go to here, and now they seem a lot more comfortable because I can come in and out of this real simply. The challenge we face when we moved to a virtual world is the influence zone changed. And the influence zone moved because now I'm in the influence zone that I was talking about before, but you can't see my hands. So I've got to move them up now here. So this is one of the things I got to do. But what's weird about this is that I feel like a Tyrannosaurus Rex, right?
Yeah.
And so it's very odd, but it looks better on camera. So we have to understand this little box that we live in here to be able to do that. And so body language, people lean on one foot more than the other. I'll just come by in our course and I'll just nudge them and they just fall over. If your body is solid, your message is solid. You got to be able to, all of these things that are all correlated. And the thing about it, and here's why it's cool. If you want to learn to read someone's mind, you read their body, because the body is an expression of the mind. And if you see somebody that's fidgety or even just this, hey, guys, I'm super excited to be here. Yeah, no, this is great. Yep, real excited. Yeah, go ahead. No, I'm listening. Just the movement of the eyes is telling you disinterest. And so being aware of what we're communicating, and that's a problem in a virtual world because you guys are down here, but my camera's right above you. So I got to look at the camera and I miss out on you, right? And so there's a practice. So we use it for my Zoom setup, which is right down here. I look through a teleprompter. We just don't put words on it. We put the Zoom call. And so that's sort of the virtual piece. But when it comes to body language, understanding hands, I understand placement, then we get into really like technical things on how to anchor a stage. We'll use, like, sometimes I'll put on the far left side of the stage, I'll tell a sad story, maybe a historical one of something that happened, and I'll leave all that emotion in that little area, and my body language and tone kind of follows that. And then when I move out of that, I kind of raise the level of energy, and I'll move out of that anchor into the far right, which might be an inspirational, a future look, a hope, a vision of some sort. And then 10, 20, 30 minutes later into the talk, if I need to re-engage the audience, I'll walk over to the sad anchor and I'll step on that button, and all of a sudden I do this, and all of a sudden the audience will follow if you've done it right. And then all of a sudden you can use chronology. So when I was a kid, it was like this, but I remember when I was 7 years old and they move over to this, but then when I was in high school and I just slide across the stage, almost like different pages in a PowerPoint slide. And so there are ways to communicate this, but the biggest piece, it comes down to understanding our own story of where we come from, because people, at the end of the day, do business with another human being. And in a place where there's competition and choices, we need to know that I trust this human being. They the expert. And that is, if you're watching this, utilize the tools that you have access to here with MBS Highway, because they're paving the way. If you literally copy the words that are being said, you're creating that. If you learn the tools, give it 5 years of your life. Like if you say, how long are you going to do this? Well, I want to learn in a month. You'll do good in a month. But what would happen if you gave it everything you had, like a professional would to their sport? 5 years. Now, don't get me wrong. You're going to be making money and having a great time during those 5 years. But 5 years from now, how old will you be if you don't do it? You're gonna be
what a great perspective. So that entire piece that you just went through was nothing but pure gold. I mean, every single aspect of it, the positioning of it, the understanding of it, the story, I hope that individuals who are watching this kind of go back and replay that again and again and take it piece by piece, because there's so many things that are there that we can learn from and make more effective presentations, whether they be virtual, whether they be in person. It applies to all of them. These are amazing learning tools for all of us to be more effective. I mean, that's where it really, Renee, being effective is what really is critical, that I think a lot of people miss out on is
Mhm.
people work hard, and that's admirable, and that's fine. I love hardworking people, and I love to work hard myself, but
Sure.
I think efficacy is the real magic formula that most people miss out on. And being effective with the material you have, with the way it's delivered, with the storyboard that it's placed on. And as we started off with, taking an idea and putting it into somebody else's brain, making that ground fertile, this is what separates you. This is what gives you that exponential growth. I always talk about this, is that, the S curve, people know what an S curve is. You have the bottom part of an S, and then you've got this big move up, and then the top part of an S. It's not your normal S like this. It's kind of like this. But that's the way many of our businesses go. You get the business that kind of goes along, and then what happens is something occurs, and you remove a point. I call it removing a point of friction. And when you remove a point of friction, you experience this amazing growth spurt, which we've all had. For all of us in the mortgage business, that happened last year when the point of friction of interest rate was removed. The good news is we benefited. The bad news is we didn't have a lot to do with it. Now, we had a lot to do with capitalizing on it and working hard, but the exponential growth we had was the point of friction being removed, because interest rates were no longer a barrier in many cases. So we got that big move up in the S curve. But then ultimately the top of that S comes and we level off again. Now, real pros, the people who are listening to this, are always trying to learn so they can jump the S curve. So what they can do is they can create from that top of one S curve to be the bottom of a new S curve, so that they can get a new form of exponential growth. It's jumping the S curve.
That's a frame of gold. That is a frame right there. Okay, keep going.
So what we're trying to do here is, in my humble opinion, I've always found it in my career, is removing points of friction. What are the points of friction right now? All the things.
I'm stealing that. I'm quoting you, but I'm stealing it.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine, brother. I love that. So the points of friction, that the good news in life is there are so many points of friction out there, right? So just let's remove them. So what are people experiencing? We talked about all of them. Well, if I bid over asking price, am I going too far? A point of friction is I'm afraid there's a housing bubble. My point of friction is I'm afraid it's not affordable. If I'm a real estate agent, my point of friction is that I've got buyers that get discouraged. They look for 3 or 4 weeks and then they flake out on because they couldn't find anything. How do I keep them engaged? That's a point of friction. So there's so many of them. If you can alleviate or remove these points of friction, what's a point of friction? I don't have money for my retirement. Okay. How are you going to retire if you don't have money for it? You want to work till you're 90, or you want to figure this out? What if I showed you that even by giving you a higher rate on your mortgage, just to be facetious here, a higher rate on your mortgage, keep your payment exactly where it is right now, but we use what's been given to you. You've been given this gift, magical gift of all this equity in your home. Let's use it properly, so that what we could do is, even if we took it to a higher rate, we now can utilize the equity in your home, reduce your debts, keep your payment the same as it is, take the proceeds, now pay down your future payments on your mortgage, so that your term is reduced by 12 years, 14 years, 17 years, less than what you would have had. That gives you an extra $5,000 a month for an extra 14 or 15 years, the best retirement plan in the world. We've got your kids' college education paid for. We alleviated your points of friction, kept your payment the same. That's going to give you exponential growth.
So powerful. I love it. I've been taking so many notes throughout this. And one thing that I am really excited about is I am excited to see you both on stage at Renee's Amplify live event in August. Renee, tell us a little bit about it, who it's for, and what people can expect to learn.
Sure. Well, it's the first one we're doing. I've done this Amplify course for close to 15 years, and the first 13 years was with private clients. It was with leadership teams and CEOs and their groups. And about 2.5 years ago, I was challenged to open it up to the public. And quite frankly, I was scared because I didn't want to get into the event planning space and having to sell spots at $5,000 a piece. And Good news is we did do it, and we've got a lot of support, and we ended up getting a lot of the nation's top producers behind it, and it's grown exponentially. We're almost to the point we've actually sold out almost all of 2021 for Amplify, and so we're given an opportunity to partner and work with Originator Connect, and we've got the entire ballroom the day prior on the August 19th, where we can have up to 500 people, and we're doing our first full day event. And you know, honestly, this was going to be an event where I was going to be speaking the whole time, and then, but you know, the only person currently right now that I'm having up on stage with me is Barry. And the reason though is we all know, like and Barry, you hear it all the time, you're the best at what you do, the best at what you do. I look at it differently. There is a masterful communicator in that. Aside from the businessman, he's an impeccable businessman. He understands the markets better than anybody else. It's been proven. All of the gold, the what do you call, the crystal ball awards and everything. I mean, it's documented. But the masterful communicator that he is what I want to uncover and play with on stage. And so that's who I want to talk about. We're not going to be talking about the markets. We're going to be talking about the secrets of doing that, because you can give all Barry's information and become a crappy communicator. You're not going to be successful. But you add on the ability to tell the story and how he understands, and the way, because I want to understand how Barry talks about it, because he gave away some of it. He's talking about the formulation of the idea, and he was talking about tilling the soil. He was talking about points of friction. These are all the little nuggets that if we understand the deeper meaning behind it and how he's thinking, that's what we want to do. So it's going to be the nation's top producers. We got to limit it at 500 people. We just launched it last week. We're selling a lot of tickets, so it is going to sell out fast. So I do recommend that you go there quickly and sign up. It's only $495, but through MBS we're offering a $100 discount with the MBS 100 code.
Awesome. MBS 100 code. I did post the link, so you guys can go ahead and click on that. And, you know, I just want to say thank you guys. The comments that have been coming in, people are so valuable. They're valuing the time that you gave them today. They needed this. And I really hope that it encouraged each and every one of you that's listening right now to get out there. Don't be afraid of promoting yourself and your business online. Don't be afraid to have those hard conversations, whether it's business or personal life. Master this. There is an art to this. And I'm excited to see everything that you guys bring to the table. And thank you guys so much for your time.
Thank you both. I really
Renee, we are so appreciative of all of the gold that you have dropped on our subscriber base here. It's all the things that we've learned as well from you, and the great work that you're doing in general, Renee. You're a gift to us here, brother. So we appreciate you. We love you. And I can't wait to share the stage with you. It's such an honor to do that, my friend.
The honor is all mine, my friend, and it's been a pleasure always working with both of you, and I think we're going to do something really special in Vegas. Planet Hollywood, August 19th, but the honor is all mine. And if I could say one message to everybody, pay attention, copy what's being said. Kobe Bryant used to watch Michael Jordan and practice the fadeaway all the time. Practice what Barry's doing and what Megan's doing. Just practice it and deliver it. Go mess it up and get better. Mess it up and get better, and over time it will become yours. And even when you mess it up, you're still adding more value than the other person's not even trying. So thank you both. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.